Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, even at home. We provide compassionate, caring support virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here.
Hello and welcome to the Republic of Football podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas is Dave Campbell's senior writer, Mike Craven. And Craven, we can't even have Memorial Day without college football existential talk coming for it now.
That's right. Greg Sankey was at the mic doing what Greg Sankey does best, and that is making everybody else mad.
How triggered did you get watching it?
Not so much triggered because, I have been, not to be this guy, but this is how I always thought it would go. This is proof of where the SEC and the Big Ten. And by the way, the Big Ten is as much culpable as the SEC, but their commissioner just doesn't get out in Front Street like Greg Sankey. And so Sankey and the SEC kind of take all the heat. But whenever this went from the BCS to the 4-team and then the 4-team wasn't enough, you knew this was an eventuality, especially as TV contracts rise and revenue share comes. The SEC and the Big Ten are trying to take their ball and go home, and these are just the beginning steps towards that.
So if you unplugged on Memorial Day and grilled out with the family, don't worry, we've got you covered. We were locked into the SEC. What is it, May meetings? What is this thing? I don't know. It's supposed to be a hangout. It turns into an existential crisis once again. Greg Sankey gets up on the mic, and for those who have been, doing other things, recently they moved the college football playoff to a straight seeding model. So last year there were guaranteed buys and top 4 seeds for conference champions. It's how Boise State got the 3 seed, I believe. They did away with that. I think, Craven, both of you and I thought, hey, smart move. Shocking, right? But college football made the right move. Well, a week later, they've decided to go more in and make more drastic changes. Couple of things. So before we get to what Sankey said, Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger has reported the 11-man college football playoff governing board is granting CFP format decision-making powers to the SEC and Big Ten starting in 2026. And they're doing this so the SEC and Big Ten don't split up and form their own playoff, which SEC and Big Ten have kind of threatened to do, not so veiled anymore. The most discussed model now is a 16-team tournament where the SEC and the Big Ten each get 4 automatic bids, and the Big 12 and ACC get 2 each. And I agree with what you said, Craven, about the Big Ten is just as culpable in this, because I saw the Athletic Stuart Mandel. He said that from who he's talked to, Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, wants an NBA play-in style tournament on the conference championship weekend. And Sankey, honestly, has been non-committal about the 4 automatic qualifiers. But Petitti wants the automatic qualifiers because he wants to have that play-in tournament. But Sankey's the one who, at the SEC, may hang out, gets on the mic and says, I don't want to lecture on what the good of the game is for, basically. So what are your thoughts here, Craven?
I guess my first thought is that it's granting the SEC and the Big Ten the decision-making powers was akin to Vanilla Ice granting Suge Knight powers in Ice Ice Baby when he hung him out of a window, right? They didn't have much choice, because like I said earlier, the Big Ten and the SEC have all the chips. At the end of the day, they can just go do their own thing. if they want to. And that is worst case scenario for everyone else, unfortunately. Like, you have to play ball a little bit with the SEC and the Big Ten, and Sankey, they know that. And that is why they're putting out all of these demands. It's just never enough, right? Like it's like the billionaire thing, right? When you're like, why? Well, you put a billionaire in charge of this, like he'll do it fairly. It's not like he needs any more money. It's like they always need more money. And these conferences are never satisfied. And that's the problem with college football. It's not really a Greg Sankey problem. I think he gets a lot of the heat, and I give him a lot of the heat. But this is a college football problem. Like, it's bad that the SEC commissioner being really good at his job is a net negative for college football. Bingo. And it just speaks to a lack of overarching leadership. Greg Sankey's doing what Greg Sankey was hired to do. And that is to make the SEC the most all-powerful organization in college football and in all of sports. And he's doing that. You can look at baseball. You can look at basketball. You can look at softball. Like, the SEC is king. And that is that is to the benefit of Greg Sankey, and that is a job well done. But it's bad for everyone else. And forever, college football has been a full wide country sport, right? Where there's 100 and something teams in it, and everybody, while not having the exact same shot, got to play in a similar sandbox. And that's going further and further away. And to me, the last straw of that is the automatic qualifiers. Mm-hmm. Right? Because, like, if they move this to 16, and they will, because they got to feed the monkey, right? Like, revenue share is coming. It's why they're talking about those play-in games. Like, they just need money. They're just finding ways to find more money. And so it will go to 16. They would get 4 teams at least in every single year. But they want the automatic 4, and they want the other 2 power conferences to only have the 2. So it is undeniable that they're better than them. Right? Like, right now we call it the Power 4. But if the Big Ten gets 4 and the SEC get 4 and the Big 12 get 2 and the ACC get 2, there's no more Power 4. There's no more illusion at Power 4. They don't have to pretend as if they're the Big 12 and the ACC's equals. And right now they kind of do. Right? And that's why they're threatened by the Cody Campbell appointment to the federal commission if that goes through. Right? Like, they have built this, and they don't want to give it back to the UTEPs of the world or the Texas Techs of the world, or anybody that they feel like they've passed up in this space. And so there's a lot of context to it, and I don't blame Greg Sankey for doing his job well. But I think we can all agree, outside of those 10 teams that this benefits, that this isn't fun. This isn't good. The sport isn't healthier than it was a decade ago.
Mm-mm. That goes back to what I wrote in the 2024 Summer Magazine on the SEC preview, where I basically compared Greg Sankey to a CEO of a corporation. And your job as CEO is to maximize shareholder value by any means necessary. The problem is there is no college football commissioner. There is no Teddy Roosevelt trust buster for Greg Sankey's John D. Rockefeller, basically. So, I mean, you could argue back then if John D. Rockefeller really was running things too, but we don't need to go all the way over there. Greg Sankey undoubtedly is running everything right now in college football. And I think there's been 2 trains of thought on this. There is your camp, Craven, that I don't think you ever really wanted expansion. You knew what this would lead to.
I didn't want the fallout from expansion because, again, it's never enough. Like, if you gave them an inch, they were going to take the full foot, and this is what taking the full foot looks like.
Mm-hmm. And then there is Stuart Mandel of The Athletic, who had a column last week about he was one of the ones who advocated for expansion, right? And I honestly wanted expansion too, but Mandel is arguing that this is BS, that the SEC and Big Ten are now putting it in writing that we are better and we deserve 4 automatic qualifiers. And I think you would say, I think Josh Pate would say, who I'll talk about in a second, I think Ari Wasserman at On3 would say, what did you expect to happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you ever watch the movie about gangs, right? Like, you ever watch The Wire or The Sopranos or anything like this?
I'm on season 5 now of The Wire. Yeah.
This is what happens, right? Like, they take part of your block and they're coming to take it all. If in a bubble, you could have expanded this to 8, kept the Pac-12 where it was, and you had 5 automatic qualifiers from the power conferences, a G5 team, and 2 at-large bids, I think everybody says that's awesome. but that's never how it was going to be. Like they're talking about expanding the college basketball playoff, and that's 68 teams now, right? Like they're going to keep growing and growing because the money's never enough. You always need more. And they were never going to, like when the rev share thing came about and they had to start paying their employees, or they are going to have to start paying their employees, they were never going to take that money from like existing right? Like Sankey's not going to give back 30% of his income. The coaches aren't going to give back 30% of their income. They're not going to start building awesome stadiums and great weight rooms to help recruit the town. Like they're going to go find more money sources, and more money sources is games. Like that is where the money sources are going to come from. So it's going to be the expansion of the playoff. It's going to be the consolidating like the power teams together, so you can sell Michigan versus USC and Texas versus Alabama and all of that stuff within the same conference. Like it was always going to go this way. And that was always my argument against it. Was I went to UTSA. I would love to live in a world where we would give access to every single program to win it. And I would argue with my friends about this expansion. Well, we're going to get a guaranteed spot into the playoff. Like we can have a route to entry. Like we can go win a national championship. No, you're not. Like they're never going to let you in the dance. They may let you play around at the golf course, but they're not going to make you a full-fledged member. Like it's just not going to happen. And we've seen it. Like I think life as a G5 fan was better before all of this.
100%.
And so I just think it was inevitability of where this thing was going. And I always found it weird how naive not the fans were, because we're all fans, right? And again, I went to UTSA. I love the idea of what it could have been. But as like longtime media members who deal with college athletics a long time, like the Stuart Mandels of the world, like I don't get how they were so naive to this and how they thought the SEC and Big Ten, contrary to all evidence otherwise, was going to just be the fox that allowed themselves into the hen house and then didn't kill all the hens.
I don't understand the argument that Greg Sankey makes when you talk about they need more games, they need more spots. He acts like at that May meeting that they made some big sacrifice to go to 12 teams, and it was for the good of the game to do that. And his argument is that they would have had 2 of the 4 teams in last year. But what I don't get, what I'm workshopping through, is like every team you get in is more money, is it not? Like 2 is worse than having 4. Or honestly, I crunched the numbers of the 4-team college football playoff era. When they had 2 SEC teams in, there was 2 years they had 2 SEC teams in. It was 2017 and 2021. So this idea that the SEC every year was getting 2 teams out of the 4 is not true. And if you have 4 automatic qualifiers, that's the same percentage chance of winning the national championship, right? Like 4 and 16 is a 4th, 1 and 4 is a 4th. You have the same chance, but you have 4 teams now taking that revenue. So that's better, but he's acting like they made some big sacrifice to expand the playoff.
Yeah, that's the part that irritates me. It's the victimhood of it when you're the SEC, right? Like, oh man, the committee doesn't value strength of schedule. Like we get punished for playing really hard games, and then Indiana gets there and 11-1. Alabama was in the conversation to make the playoff after losing to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like they get the benefit of the doubt. They were ahead of the Big 12 champion in the final committee rankings. Like going into, they were 11th. Arizona State was 12th. Like the committee obviously values the SEC schedule. And don't get me wrong, the SEC schedule is harder than everyone else.
100%.
It's just already cooked in, right? Like you already get the benefit of the doubt. Ole Miss and South Carolina were ranked ahead of BYU. Indiana was 8th behind 5 teams that had 2 losses. Like the idea that they just throw up the records and blindly put the ones with the better, the fewer amount of losses in there is a fallacy. And it's just another example of the SEC like putting out false information just to play victim and hoping that nobody pays attention. Right. And you know, like yesterday with the whole, like, you can put out your coordinated press releases. Well, the Big 12, like, immediately was like, there was no press release, like much less one coordinated with the ACC. And so if you're going to be the big bad bully, like go be the big bad bully, but don't like also try to tell me that you're getting picked on and these things aren't fair. And really you're the victim here and you should have more teams. And if everything was fair, we'd actually like, we're all smarter than that. Or at least we should be. And so I don't know. It's it's harder and harder to like enjoy the football because of all the stuff on the outside. And I guess I've never understood why the power brokers of this sport are so hell bent on ruining it for everybody. Like I just never understood that part of it, even before all this. Like for my whole life, the NCAA has made rulings and rules and decisions that fly contrary to everything we like about college football. The paying of players and the way that it's done, asking the donors who are already donating and the ticket, buyers that are already buying tickets to give the money. The transfer portal being unlimited because they like hid their head in the sands for so long, ruining the regionality of the sport. Like all of the things that they've done don't help the sport. It's just lucky for them that we love it so much we can't give it up. But it continues to always be a decision that makes no sense if you were thinking about the actual consumer of your product.
Well, it's because when they're thinking about the product, they're just all suits in a boardroom saying like, if we make this decision that everyone's going to hate, they're still going to watch our stuff, but we will make 1/10 of a dollar more. It's just like total profit maximization. You mentioned there, the sport feels different. I saw one of the big takes coming out for Josh Pate, who has a college football show, and I really like Josh Pate. Let me say that before I start on what I'm about to say. His take was college football is messy, but when anyone claims it's ruined, I always ask the same question: do fall Saturdays still feel the same? And he kind of goes into that whole like it's 3rd and 8, and Alabama's playing Georgia, and it's inside 2 minutes, and the stadium is electric. Like, does that feel the same? I'd argue that's a lazy argument because that's basically, is football still exciting? I think it only feels the same if you talk about or are a fan of the top 20 teams in college football, the blue bloods. But you and I, Craven, cover from Texas and A&M, the blue bloods, to UTEP and Sam Houston, who are in Conference USA, and it's a different sport for the teams that are at the very bottom. And I'd argue, I saw Shahan Jayaraja, the former employee friend of the program at Dave Campbell's. He said the roster turnover and there's no regionality in the conference anymore. That makes it feel a lot different. So what do you think about that? I think it's totally different. I think fall Saturdays feel different for most of, if not all, non-blue bloods.
I think Chris Vanini nailed it when he quote tweeted it and said, like, I had to ask Washington State and Oregon State if it feels any different.
Facts.
Right? Like they got completely left behind, and there's going to be more Washington States and Oregon States. Like it's not going to be those two. Like Texas Tech is worried about being left behind. Baylor is worried about being left behind. Iowa State's worried about being left behind, right? Like there's no telling where this thing stops and who gets cut off and who gets allowed on the bus. And that should scare all of us because you lose a couple of programs, fine. Most of us get over it. The G5 is not exactly what the P4 is. And like there's this understood kind of like Mason Dixon line with it. And we know that, who's above other. Okay, fine. Like most people only care about Power 4 football, right? Like the viewership backs that up. But when you start chopping off other Power 4 teams, like where does it stop? And if you isolate whole pockets of the country, why would they care about your product anymore? And they're assuming that like the Iowa State fan watches Alabama, Georgia regardless, not that the Iowa State fan watches Alabama, Georgia because it matters to them because they're in the same atmosphere, like the same sport. And so you're just watching your peers play because you're trying to see who's going to be ranked ahead and who loses so you can move up the top 25. Well, if you're no longer in those same boats, right? If what happens in the Texas LSU game no longer matters to Kansas State because they're not even in the same like league anymore, why would they watch it? Like, why would they care? I mean, other than football is football, right? And so I just think they're banking on our enjoyment of college football and big time college football never running out. And I would just argue that that's not going to be true. Well, and the Josh Pates of the world can exist by only covering those 20 to 25 teams that quote unquote matter and bring in ratings. But that's not what college football is. To me, that's not what college football is and what makes it beautiful. I could just go be an NFL fan if that is how I wanted to watch the sport. But I don't, because I like UTEP versus New Mexico State. I like Kansas State versus Iowa State. I like the Apple Cup. I liked Baylor versus Texas. I liked SMU being in the same conference as all the other schools around them. And I don't know. I think we're losing that, and I don't think it's good.
Here's where this is going. You mentioned the NFL. College football is heading towards the Big Ten and the SEC are the two conferences. There's 32 teams in the entire league. What does that sound like? That is NFL, except it's played with 18 to 22-year-olds, which means it's worse than the NFL. It's worse football than the NFL. So what is the market for it?
And you're rooting for laundry. And if the people in that laundry no longer represent your school, right? Because the end game to this, like eventually they all split away from the NCAA, and then they're just licensing the jersey, and you can or cannot go to school, right? Like it won't even matter. You'll just be employees of the university, and if you don't want to go get your degree, you don't have to. And right or wrong, I think one of the lures of college football was like you're rooting on people who like also sat in your same dorms and in your same classrooms and ate at the same places you did and went to parties at the same frat houses that you did 30 years ago. And there's this like interconnective tissue to that. Like, wow, like Vince Young loves Texas the way I love Texas. And maybe that was never true. Maybe that was always kind of a fallacy, right? But like it felt more true then than it does now. And that's specifically true if you're a fan of North Texas or UTSA or Texas State or like look at where all those players go. Like they don't stick around anymore. Mm-hmm. And so like you can't even like fall in love with your favorite linebacker or wide receiver or quarterback, especially because they're going to be gone. And so all you have left is to root for the university and to root for the school. And if they kick your school out of that club, why would you care about the other schools? Right? Like I'm obsessed with football. This is our job. We'll probably keep watching. But like, I'm a English Premier League fan, but I wasn't raised and born in that. Right. And if Liverpool for some reason got kicked out of the English Premier, I don't know if I would keep watching it in the same way because like my tie to the league would no longer matter. And so why would I watch that league all the time? I just think if you're a Baylor fan, and you're no longer in the same league as Texas and Georgia and Ohio State and Penn State, why do you care about their league anymore? And why would you care about yours? And then all of a sudden we lose what matters to a lot of us in college football. I just think we're going down a really big slope here, and the people in charge have so much self-interest in their own deal that the greater good can't be looked at and served in any real way.
Well, to add insult to injury, the White House has now paused plans for President Trump's commission on college sports. So, I mean, I thought it was going to be saved, and now we're screwed again.
Ted Cruz has come to save the day, Carter. Haven't you heard?
No. Did they just – is it back on?
Well, I think he's going to do something similar to that. He's definitely like the sports senator right now, like jokes about Ted Cruz aside. I do think he cares greatly about this topic, and I do think he will try to get something done here. I just don't know what can be done. The antitrust, like that's just above my pay grade. But the more people who are involved that aren't working for the SEC and the Big Ten, the better. And that's why I'm rooting for Cody Campbell here, right? Because like Cody Campbell's a billionaire. He's not like a second-class citizen fighting for the underdog, right? But like in this scenario, Texas Tech is the underdog. And I think having more people who are representative of schools that would be left out of this grand super plan is good because you need those people at the table. Because like a Nick Saban, what would he know about needing to help those type of teams in the world? You know, like he's been for so long, he's been in the power seat chairs to where he doesn't know what TCU needs or what Tech needs or what Iowa State needs or what SMU needs. And so we need more and more of the big money folks with a lot of power at those schools to step in and wield some of theirs and see if they can offset what is happening with the two power conferences.
Let's get more cooks in the kitchen, not involved with SEC and Big Ten. As good, Cruz is stepping in, though. He's got some good mojo. Usually his sports teams he roots for do well, right? That should help. All right. I think maybe
he'll be too busy to go to actual games.
I think that's something all Astros fans could hope for, and whichever other games he goes to. All right. I think we've talked it out. Nothing else to add here, really. I don't have anything else.
Yeah. Nothing that I can say on this podcast.
We'll talk it more off air. All right. Well, we're going to go into our bold predictions for the upcoming 2025 college football season. Before we do that, though, I got some words from our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Guys, head on over to Home Field Apparel. Get 10% off your first purchase. All those schools we've talked about that aren't in the Big Ten and SEC, that's what I love about Home Field Apparel. They show equal love to everybody.
That's right.
They've got everyone's gear. They got pullovers, hoodies, sweatshirts, hats. I got a couple shirts from Home Field that I love. Very comfortable. I always get compliments on when I wear them out. So head on over to Home Field Apparel, guys. Get 10% off your first purchase using promo code DCTF. That's Home Field Apparel. 10% off your first purchase with promo code DCTF. All right. Now that we fired off some takes about the future of college football, let's fire off some more hot takes about the immediate future in 2025. Craven, we each are coming to the table with 3 bold predictions. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? How do you want to do this? Do we want to go order of most spicy to least spicy? How do we do
you go first with your most spicy one. We'll work down.
I've got 2 that could probably be in contention, but I'm going to start off with the Texas Longhorns because this is the most hyper-specific one. Texas goes 9-3. All right, first off, everyone close your eyes, except if you're driving and listening to this. Don't close your eyes. But picture this. Texas will go 9-3. They miss the SEC championship game, but they make the college football playoff over either an ACC or Big 12 conference championship game participant. That means they make it over SMU or Miami or Texas Tech or Iowa State that lost the championship game. And it is the single most controversial college football playoff decision ever. And it's made because someone makes a call that we need Arch Manning in the college football playoff.
I mean, it is an invitational, so I wouldn't put it past them. I'm not sure a 3-loss team gets in. And the reason I would say that is if you tell me the 3 losses that you think Texas would have, I'd imagine it'd be Ohio State, Georgia, and maybe Oklahoma.
I'm throwing in Florida. You convinced me last week. The DJ Lagway versus Arch Manning battle trap game before Oklahoma. They drop a game they shouldn't. Let's add that in there. One of their losses is bad. So let's
say it's Ohio State, Georgia, and Florida, right? I don't think a 3-loss Texas team can get in because that means their only other good win would be Oklahoma, right? Like they would need, they would need like to either beat Ohio State or Georgia and then lose 2, like lose to like Florida, Oklahoma, and A&M, but have Ohio State and Georgia wins in their ledger. Because I do think, contrary to what Greg Sankey is saying in front of a mic, big wins are what get you at the table, like get you in the conversation with this committee. It's not so much your losses. It's like, how good are you on your best day? Not so much how bad are you on your worst. And if they've proven on their best day, they can go to Ohio State or they can go to Georgia. Maybe they get in. But if they lose those 2 marquee games plus another, I'm just not sure their schedule is big enough to like make up for that.
Okay. So let me switch the hypothetical to they beat Ohio State. They beat Oklahoma. They lose to Georgia. So they've lost an SEC game. They lose to Texas A&M and then lose to Florida. So wait, they have 3 SEC losses.
Yeah, I think they got a shot if they've beaten Ohio State and like an Oklahoma or an Ohio State and Georgia. Like they have to have a feather or 2 in their cap to overcome it.
And also in this hypothetical, Arch Manning is a Heisman finalist who has just backpacked the team to it. Like they're a worse team than last year, but they were 9-3 because Arch Manning is playing like a god.
And you also need the favorites to win in the Big 12 and ACC championship game. Like had SMU beat Clemson last year, Alabama's in and we're not having some of these conversations, right? But Clemson won, took that spot, and they couldn't leave out a 1 loss, then 2 loss because of the champion. Like they don't count the championship game as your real loss anymore, if we've noticed that. And so SMU, they couldn't leave out with only 1 regular season loss. They played an extra game. So it would really be a 3-loss team versus a 1-loss team in the way that they were doing it. They need the favorites. Like if a 10-2 Tech is playing a 9-3 Baylor or something, and they need Tech to win that so they don't get a spot stolen. Like, and you know, they don't. And so I think it would need that as well for this scenario to work.
So you're telling me there's a chance. I'm threading the needle here. On a 1 to 5 flame rating at Pluckers, like what is this?
I think it's a 4 because they would need a lot to go on for this to happen, and they would need to win some big games, I think, and lose some not big games for it to work because they would need some resume builders. I think my spiciest take is the winner of UTSA North Texas makes the AAC championship game.
Okay.
I may be too deep into the woods here. Like, this happens magazine season, right? You're doing 5 pages on a school. You can start talking yourself into them being good very quickly. But that UTSA offense, probably the best unit in the AAC, maybe in the G5, bringing back literally almost everybody, should be healthier this year, especially if they get a couple of offensive linemen back from surgeries and can, get deep along the offensive line. Running game comes along. Owen McCown might be the best quarterback in the G5. And if the McCown family and the Traylor family weren't so tight, he's probably not at UTSA anymore, right? Like, it's just one of those special circumstances that are giving the Roadrunners a real opportunity here. The defense loses a lot, but they have to be better. Like, I just don't see a Jeff Traylor team being as undisciplined as they were last year. They weren't good at tackling. They weren't good at holding leads, and they were god awful with penalties. Like, they figured that stuff out in the back half of the season. I'm just going to count on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just going to count on that correcting itself and being better. And then North Texas, to me, it's the route. Like, they don't have Memphis. They don't have Tulane. They get UTSA at home. If they win that game, the only real game in the conference that they're probably an underdog in is at Army, and that's the first game of the conference season. They do play 3 option teams, Navy, Army, and Rice, and North Texas hasn't been good stopping the run. And saying not good at stopping the run is the understatement of this show. They were god-awful at stopping the run. But kind of how I'm counting on coaching at UTSA to fix some of the undisciplined stuff, Skylar Cassidy is good at this. And he brought in enough familiar faces to his defense that I think they hit the ground running. They improved by like 40 or 50 spots in 1 year in Sam Houston in total defense. I think they do the same at North Texas. And we've talked about it for 2 years. If North Texas is just good on defense, they don't have to be great. If they're just good on defense, the offense is going to be one of the top 10 offenses in the country. So you combine the schedule, you combine the improvement on the defensive side of the ball. If you buy into that, I think the winner of that game has a great shot to play for the conference championship against an Army or Tulane or a Memphis.
I'm only giving that take 2.5 fire emojis because I just agree with it so much.
I'm not a great hot take. This one's going to be tough for me. I'm not a great hot take guy. I'm not a crazy opinion guy. I'm pretty down the mid. So that to me, that's going out on a limb.
I mean, I was reading your UTSA preview, and I'm not going to give it all away, of course. Go check it out when it comes out July 4th weekend, somewhere around there in stores, or if you're a subscriber at TexasFootball.com. But he has some quote in there, Traylor does, where he's like, when we first got here, we were some hungry dogs, and we lost that last year. And that mindset, like, I was fired up, ready to run through a brick wall reading it, So, and last year, they go 7-6. They have a winning season, and the way he's talking about it is it was a full cultural reset they have. So I'm kind of all in on UTSA, especially with Owen McCown.
Yeah, I think everyone underestimated the transition year that was going to be after Frank Harris and Rashad Wisdom, and a lot of those leaders just left. And then, Traylor was in on the Houston job. He was in on the A&M job. I just think that there was a lot going on there for UTSA, and they didn't respond well. They started really poorly in the first half of the year before figuring it out. They had arguably their 2 worst losses under Traylor, against Tulsa and against Rice last year, and arguably their biggest win, beating a ranked Memphis team at home when the season was on the line. And I'm just gambling, and I'm using, past history here. I just think they're more the second half team of the year than they were the first half of the season. Bringing back your quarterback and some of that leadership, I think, is going to help them. They feel like they did pretty good portal-wise on the defensive side of the ball. Like, that's the big question. It's just I think the offense is going to be tremendous. The defense has to be good, and last year they were bad, and they were also a bad situational football team. Like, again, they were god-awful with penalties and turnovers. If they can figure that stuff out, they got a chance to kind of recalibrate and get to a conference championship game for the 4th time in, 6 years that he's been there.
And then I just agree with everything you said on North Texas. Just defense has to be okay, basically. And I think, I don't know, like, maybe this offensive personnel is a bit shakier than it was in the past 2 years. Like, I probably was more excited about Chandler Morris coming in to quarterback this team than I am about either of the 2 options they have right now. But at the same time, like, Eric Morris is going to scheme me or you to 35 points a game. So,
right.
Like, I think it's going to be all right. And, like, I'm a Skylar Cassidy believer. So,
yeah. Same.
I think it'll be good.
I mean, if I'm hiring an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator in the state, like I'm thinking of Eric Morris calling plays, and I'm thinking of Skylar Cassidy coaching the defense. Like, I'm not saying they're like top of the list, but like they're definitely in those conversations. They have both of those guys. I like what they did in the portal. There's a huge volatility with the portal. You just never know. It can go boom or bust very quickly. Ask Florida State. But if it hits plus that schedule, I think the Mean Green can be a real surprise of the G5. If you're a gambling person, North Texas to win the American is a solid bet to place because not many people are going to be paying attention to that.
All right, I'm going with my number 2 take. This one might be pretty spicy. At Texas Tech, backup quarterback Will Hammond, Wally Pips, starting quarterback Baron Morton at some point this season. Kind of like Kevin Jennings did to Preston Stone last year at SMU. And let me get a couple qualifiers out of the way. This is not so much a knock on Baron Morton as it is I'm a believer in Will Hammond. I think Baron Morton's a program guy. He's tough as hell. By all accounts, he's a great leader. I think there is a level of quarterback play that injuries to his arm and various nagging stuff has kind of prevented him from reaching when he came out of high school. And with this roster and the money invested in it, they just can't afford to have a guy who's banged up when there's a 4-star behind him. This is also going along with the fact that he missed spring football and they have so many more new transfers in that he couldn't build chemistry with. And from everything I saw on the very outside looking in, he handled the injury very well and he's so bought in like during the spring. So this is not like a Baron Morton hasn't handled anything right, but you can't have any substitute for reps with a bunch of new guys on your team. And Will Hammond got that.
And I think the big point here, and the reason that I can see this unfolding, is if Morton gets hurt kind of early in the season, has to miss a game or two, and Hammond comes in and just lights it up, and you just have so much riding on this season that you just go with the hot hand and maybe he never gives it back. Mm-hmm. And that's I think that the Kevin Jennings, Preston Stone scenario is possible because, again, I'm not sure Kevin Jennings is like all that much better of a quarterback than Preston Stone, just like for like. Right. And I don't know if Will Hammond is a better or worse quarterback than Baron Morton. They're probably pretty similar prospects. But I do think some teams just play better with different quarterbacks. And if Hammond gets inserted early in the year, has a big game or two while Morton's kind of nursing an injury, I can see this team going, we have all of these puzzle pieces. We're trying to win this thing. We're on a roll. We're just going to ride the hot hand. And maybe Hammond just never gives it back because he is a talented SOB. He is a really, really good football player who I think his upside is more than post-surgeries Morton. He's athletic. He can run around. He's big, got a strong arm. I think Will Hammond's the real deal, and I know that staff does as well.
There was kind of a different electricity in the air when he went against TCU.
Yeah, I think he can. I think, we talked about the, what is it, a trailer or a truck or a trailer type of thing. Like, I think Will Hammond can be the type that drives it, right? That can pull it along, not just a part of the mechanism. I think he can go win you a Big 12 championship. He was great. I mean, I live right next to Hutto, so I've seen him for a long time. He's a really good football player who, if given an opportunity, a real one, I think could just take the horns and never let it go.
Yeah. Again, if this was 3 years ago and Joey just got the job, I don't know if this happens, but now that it's year 4 of the Joey McGuire era, Barron's ending his eligibility, you've had Will Hammond stay there for 2 years now. There is so much urgency on this season that it might not even be hey, this quarterback's playing bad. It's this quarterback is just a little bit better and our other quarterback's hurt a little bit.
Yeah. And we feel like we can go be a playoff team and we want the upside. And we're just going to go for this thing. That season does allow you to their schedule does allow you to kind of ease into it. So if Morton plays well and they're 5-0, I don't know, maybe you just kind of keep this thing on the tracks. It just depends on how Morton plays early on in the season. All signs point to the shoulder being okay, as good as it was last year. And he played for most of the season there. So we'll see. But I mean, Hammond is clearly the projected starter in 2026, and maybe the future just starts early if they love what they see over the summer and in the fall. I think my next spicy one, maybe this is spicier than my first one. I think 2 Texas teams are going to play for the Big 12 championship.
I think this one's spicier than your first one.
I mean, Texas Tech needs to be in Arlington.
Yes.
We talked about this last show. Like if you don't hit the over this year on 8.5, that was a failure. Like 9-3 or 10-2 needs to be the standard. They need to be in Arlington. That 7-2 got you into the Big 12 championship game last year. I think that they can do that. They don't play TCU. They don't play Baylor. I think that they have a decent enough schedule. They need to be in the Big 12 championship. I think I have two options to get the other one right. Anybody who's listened to the show and read my stuff throughout the offseason knows how I feel about Baylor. I think the Bears can be really good. Again, they have a schedule that lines up as well. Arizona State early in the year. You can lose those non-conference games to SMU and Auburn and still be right in the driver's seat here. Like you don't have to ace the non-conference stuff. You just have to get hot in conference. They did that last year with a great run. They returned so much on both sides of the ball. I think Dave Aranda calling the defense for the second year in a row is going to help them. My wild card here is TCU. I think the Horned Frogs are completely undervalued by gambling lines and just by Joe Public. I don't know how TCU and Houston have the same win total projections. TCU's schedule is pretty tough, but like it's the Big 12. Like who the hell knows what the tough schedule is going to be, what the easy schedule is going to be. I love their quarterback. Josh Hoover is excellent. They did great replacing those wide receivers. They're going to be better running the football. Andy Avalos is like really high on this defense. Like Avalos isn't the most excitable guy in the world. And he was like happy when I was there talking to him. Like he was like in a good mood to be talking about his defense, which I think lends me to believe that he's like really confident in that group. They're going to be a lot deeper this year with some playmakers on the ball. I like their roster building. You know, I wrote that article early in the week about how TCU and Tech have kind of taken different routes, but it's not that TCU. I think some people read the headline and kind of got mad at me because like TCU has also used the transfer portal. They just didn't go do it in like 1 year splash superstar established play. Like they didn't go get the David Baileys and the Lee Hunters of the world. They went and got some guys that like they developed last year and were multiple year transfer guys who are like becoming better and better football players who are still there, who are kind of the old school recruit where you develop them and kind of unleash them. They didn't have to go into it as much this year except for depth. I think TCU could be like, there's always a Big 12 team that surprises. I think TCU could be that team that is undervalued this year that wins 10 games.
And Houston?
I don't think Houston is. I mean, I guess if everything hits, who knows? I mean, Willie Fritz, like, I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't see it. Yeah, I think it's a 3-team race. I think Houston could get to maybe 7 or 8 wins, but this would be insane. And I mean, a team has done it. Arizona State was picked last year. Like if we were having this conversation this time last year, neither one of us would think Arizona State was going to be that team. So like Houston could be, who knows? But I wouldn't bet on it.
I love the TCU being a surprise team call. I agree with you. They're so undervalued. I don't know how them and Houston have both 6.5 over under totals. Texas Tech and Baylor, one of them is they both have such high expectations. One of them is going to fall short, I think. I don't know which one it's going to be, but one of them is going to.
Who do you think it's most likely to be?
Texas Tech.
I do too. I think Texas Tech has the highest ceiling, and I think Texas Tech has the lowest floor because of the Florida State dilemma, right? Yep. Like, if this starts well and they're 7-8-0 and they're in the mix, like I think Texas Tech could be a 10-2, 11-1, get a bye into the playoff. Like Tech could be really good at their best. But if they lose an early game or they stub their toe, they have some injuries, like I just think it could fall apart. And their expectations are higher. And so I do think Tech is the volatile one here. They could be the Big 12 champion. They could be 7-5.
And you might be listening to this like, guys, look at their schedule. It's so easy. I can't get the Abilene Christian game out of my head from last year.
Right. Or at Washington State.
Or like Wyoming before that. Like 2 years ago.
Right. 100%. Like they have shown the ability to go mess a game up on the road, especially early in the year. And that's something that this coaching staff knows that they're trying to address, but like, you don't know. And I do think this schedule is easier, but it's still the Big 12. There's still going to be teams that can pop up and get you. You're still going to have to go on the road where I think you're 6-9 so far, something like 6-11, something like that in the tenure. And so there's still a lot to be seen from this Texas Tech thing, but their roster is great. Like both of those things are true. And if it hits, they should be the class of the conference. But as we've seen in this league, that doesn't always mean anything. Like this thing isn't played on paper. This thing is eight or nine coin flips, right?
Yep.
And you hope you win 7 or 8 of them. And TCU did it a couple years ago. Arizona State did it. Oklahoma State did it 2 years. Like you're going to need that. And we'll see if Tech can land on that side of the margin.
Yeah, I am like 60%. I think this is all going to work out, but there is 40% of me that is like, there are some things that concern me. I almost made my hot take. Texas Tech goes 8-5 or 7-6, and Joey McGuire's on the hottest seat in college football entering 2026. And I didn't do it because I 60% think it's going to work out. And I think Joey McGuire is a really good coach, but there could be stuff that's like with the mercenary army deal, the Florida State, all the transfers, like these aren't guys he's known. Like when he was back in high school, coaching them all 4 years, there are some stuff that makes me nervous.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, Oregon State, all at home, they should be 3-0. But you can go on the road and lose to Utah. You're like
100%.
They brought in a really good quarterback from the G5 that should be exciting. Like, and then 2 weeks later, you go on the road and play at Houston. We saw Kansas State and TCU lose to the Cougars last year. This is going to be a better Houston team. Like, if you start Big 12 play 0-2, and those are both road games, right? Like, the wheels fall off. Like the checks are already cashed. Like you haven't had those guys for 4 years where you've been in foxholes with them and you've built up this, like, like it can get Florida Statey in a hurry. I wouldn't bet on that. I'm betting the other way. I think they go 9-3, 10-2, reach the Big 12 championship game. But there is a scenario where they start slow in the Big 12. They don't feel like there's that much out in front of them. And it just, kind of falls by the wayside a little bit. Whereas I think Baylor, it's so many guys who have been in that program. There's so much continuity with the coordinators and the head coach. I just think they're less likely to completely bottom out. They may not reach their ceiling, but I think that there's less margin of them being like a complete letdown.
They're foxhole guys. Most of the guys coming back were 2-4 last year when it was so dire.
Right.
They
like
got
Keaton Thomas, Sawyer Robinson, like those guys are in it. Right? Like those guys are like in it with Aranda. They're not as mercenary. And again, I don't think that's a negative thing. Like if I had Tech's money, I'd also go sign the best players I can. Like this is a personnel sport. Like I'm always going to bet on the players. And so like, that's why I give Tech a better chance of winning the Big 12 than Baylor. But I do think in a team sport like football, which is very unique, it is kind of like, brotherhood and looking across, right? Like kind of militaristic in that kind of way, right? You're like fighting for your brother next to you and all that stuff. Like I do think that matters when adversity strikes. And in the Big 12, adversity is going to strike. And we'll just see how they're able to handle that.
I'll give that one 4 flames. That was spicy.
So that's my bigger one. Okay. All right.
I think my Will Hammond, Wally Pibbs, Baron Morton is probably actually, I don't know. My Texan one's so specific that's probably spicier. Like that so many things have to happen.
Right. Yeah. You're threading a needle there for sure.
Okay. My last one, I'm going to UTEP as UTEP makes a bowl. We've workshopped, like both of us are high on UTEP. We kind of workshopped this out. I wrote down they're the surprise team of the G5, like Sam Houston. You write they make a bowl game. I think this depends on Malachi Nelson reaching his potential and a question on what is Malachi Nelson's potential. Going to that magazine visit, you expect the coach to say, hey, this is all a competition, right? This is a QB competition. Lincoln Riley used to do this with Jalen Hurts would come in. It's like, he's not coming to be a backup, Lincoln. Right. And I think everyone, including us, thought when Malachi Nelson comes to UTEP, like, that's your starter. He's going to tear up Conference USA. Then he's going to go to a Power 4 school the next year. The deeper this gets into the spring, into the summer, talk to people around the program, like it is not close to a sure thing Nelson's even starting. Like Skylar Locklear might be the starter come week 1. And you got to wonder, like, does that say more about Nelson or does that say more about Walden himself being a foxhole guy? And he loves the Austin P guys and the guys he knows about. I don't know.
I don't know either. I want to say it's more about Malachi Nelson. I just think we're still stuck on the 5-star thing. And I don't mean just you and I just think in general that tag gets, and if you look at that class, there's a lot of bad quarterback evaluations in that one. Like I think COVID kind of wrecked a lot of quarterback evaluations and quarterback development over those couple of years. And I just think Malachi Nelson's one that was severely overrated. Didn't win the job at Boise State, drops down to UTEP. I think I flirted with my hot take being Skylar Locklear starts more games than Malachi Nelson. Because I just think you roll with the guy that you know. He had him at Austin Peay. He's had him for a year at UTEP. As you mentioned in your section, and I've talked to Scotty as well, like Skylar Locklear had a really good spring, one that they're calling the best spring that he's had. And he didn't leave, right? Like if the writing was on the wall and he exited spring as the surefire backup guy, I'd imagine he finds another place to go play some quarterback. And he didn't do that. And that lends me to believe that he has a real shot of being the starting quarterback here. Regardless, I think UTEP can be really good with either of those guys. I think what we've seen with Sam Houston, what we've seen with Jack State, is you can jump from the bottom tier of Conference USA to the second tier of Conference USA really, really easily. Maybe you're not Western Kentucky, maybe you're not Liberty, but you can be the third or fourth best team. And if you're the third or fourth best team in Conference USA, you can get to 9 or 10 wins. Ask Sam Houston State. I don't think they're going to do it the same way. I don't think it's going to be dominant defense, ball control, right? I mean, we know what Scotty's offense is going to be. It's going to have to look differently than Sam Houston, but I would not be surprised if UTEP is the surprise team of the G5 in the state where you look down and they're 8-4 or something, and they just win a lot of close games against a lot of bad teams.
Yeah, Malachi Nelson's a good case study of like at what point can you not be called former 5-star anymore?
Right. I think it's your third stop.
Okay, so we're done with that.
Right. At your second stop, you're a former 5-star. At your third stop, when they're progressively lower on the totem pole of stops, right? When you go from USC to Boise State to UTEP, you're just maybe like a former USC quarterback. But I don't know if you're a former 5-star anymore. And again, I think that class was just kind of weird. And I do think just there's some pandemic COVID stuff that happened in those years that like just messed up quarterback evaluations across the board, not just in the evaluation process for recruiting, but I think colleges as well.
And I agree with that, but I would also say, and I like Skylar Locklear, like he showed a lot of toughness last year. That one game he almost got killed, like decapitated. Like he's a gritty, tough dude. I think UTEP can make a bowl game with Skylar Locklear, and maybe that's our hot take. So yes, they can do that with either or, but I think like the ceiling of UTEP goes 9-3. That can only happen with Nelson, in my opinion.
Well, what games can't they win? Right, like I'm gonna read the schedule, and you tell me which games they can't win.
Okay,
right? Utah State,
they can win that.
UT Martin.
And this is
with either quarterbacks, right? This is with either quarterbacks.
Yeah,
right?
They better win UT Martin.
Right. Okay. At Texas, clearly.
Nope.
ULM.
Yes.
La Tech.
Yeah.
Liberty.
Yes, they can.
I'm going to go no. I'll give that no just for argument's sake, right?
Okay.
At Sam. Sure.
Yes.
At Kennesaw.
Yep.
Versus Jack State with a new coach.
Yeah.
At Missouri State, who's a new FBS team.
Yep.
New Mexico State. At Delaware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
it's there.
I think Liberty and Texas are like the only ones where it's like, no way. They can't win that game. And we saw Kennesaw State beat Liberty last year, right? So like maybe that's not. I just think in Conference USA, there's enough margin of error and there's enough evenness to where like a team like UTEP in year 2 that has recruited really well, that should have some talent, can just jump up and overachieve and win 8 or 9 games. Will they? Don't know. But I think they can for sure.
The one concern, I mean, I have a couple of concerns with UTEP, but my big concern was the defensive line depth. And Katie Johnson is like their one proven guy, the 6-year senior. I did see, though, they got Orion Fisher from West Virginia. That was a late summer transfer portal ad. So that they just need bodies there.
Yeah, you just need bodies up there. You just need bodies. And luckily, they're not going to face a bunch of monsters outside the Texas game. They just got to get out of that Texas game healthy. Sometimes what happens to those G5 programs is they play that body bag or the money bag game and they become the body bag, right? Where they just leave, like this happened to UTSA a couple years ago, but they just like left the Texas game with like 20 guys injured and just never recovered.
Yeah.
You got to stay healthy in that game and survive and advance to play the rest of your schedule. I think a lot of them are coin flip games that they could win. They might not, they could lose also. They could, we went through that list of games they could win. We could have also said they could lose those games, right? Like they could also be 3-9 again if it doesn't work out. But I think they got a chance. I think they got a chance to surprise people. My last one. So I don't think that was all that spicy because I think it could have gotten spicier. I think we could have gone to UTEP wins 8 wins.
Mm-hmm.
My last one, I don't know. I don't think this is all that spicy. Texas A&M leads the SEC in rushing.
Yeah, this one's not spicy, I don't think. I like it a lot. But they got Ruben Owens and Le'Veon Moss back and Marcel Reed.
But I think most people would say South Carolina or Alabama or Georgia. I think if you gave the average college football fan, you're like, who's going to lead the SEC in rushing? Like, not many would say A&M. So, like, to me, that makes it spicy. Like, you are a well-versed college football fan, and so maybe it's not that big of a deal to you. But I think to the average person listening to this, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think to the average college football fan, A&M would not be one of the top 3 teams mentioned in terms of leaving the SEC in rushing. I think there's an argument Texas could lead the SEC in rushing with Arch Manning and CJ Baxter coming back, Trey Wisner. But I'm going to go with the Aggies. Colin Klein, being the offensive coordinator, obviously he wants to run the football. I think this is going to be the most Kansas State-ass Texas A&M offense that you can find. I think that they're rolling with Marcel Reed, and it's going to look like what Colin Klein's offense looked like when he was an actual quarterback at Kansas State. If there's anybody who can call an offense for a guy who's better at running and maybe limited as a passer, especially vertically, it's the guy who made it Heisman, being a quarterback I just described. Their top 7 offensive linemen come back, including Mark Naboo that had been injured. Their 4 best running backs come back. Marcel Reed's great at running the football. I think they're going to run the ball well. I think they're going to run the ball a lot, and I think that they're going to be in a top. If you take away the option teams, I think Texas A&M is going to be in the running for best running team, not only in the SEC but in college football. Maybe that's what I should have said. A&M leads the country in rushing the football outside of the Liberties and option teams.
There we go.
We
get spicier as we talk it out.
Right. We get rid of, like the go-go offense, like Liberty, like Army, Navy, like sure, those are going to run the ball more. But in terms of traditional quote-unquote pro-style offenses, I think A&M is going to have the best rushing attack in the country. Maybe Penn State has something to say about that.
We're like Michael Scott. We just start a take. We don't even know where it's going.
Right. That's how bad I am at hot takes.
I went on the 3 Technique podcast. Shout out those guys. Great work they do over there. I went on there Friday. And I was workshopping a take because Mitch, the guy who hosted, is an A&M grad. And I was like, can Texas A&M become the Kansas State of the SEC in terms of smash mouth, hard nose, run the ball type offense? And do A&M fans find that offensive that I say, can they be the Kansas State of the SEC? He seemed to like it. What do you think about, you're saying it right there with the Kansas State offense that they can run.
I think that's what Mike Elko's intention was when he hired Colin Klein, right? Like you hire Mike Elko to be a down in the dumps, dirty dog team. Like that's what, you would have gone and hired a hotshot offensive coordinator if you wanted to do like what Texas does. When A&M has been at their best historically, they've been a nasty physical wrecking crew, hit you in the mouth, drag you into deep waters and drown you football team. And I think they're trying to get back to that by hiring Mike Elko, and I think Mike Elko leaned into that by hiring Colin Klein. They weren't that last year, but you saw steps towards it. You saw a much more physical football team than you had the last couple of years under Jimbo Fisher. The offensive line, I think, is proof positive number 1. Like that was a weakness, and it has turned into a strength, and it took 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
I think the defense is going to be more physical. I do think that's the aiming point. When they hired Mike Elko, they looked around and they said, the teams winning national championships in the SEC especially are coached by former defensive coordinators who are physical, run the football, and beat you up. And they're trying to bring that. And I think they're also trying to zig from what Texas is with Steve Sarkisian and go the opposite way and not compete in the same lane, but kind of be the antithesis to that program. And not that Texas is like the soft country club program it's known for, but it's a bunch of Ferraris in that garage, right? Like,
literally.
Right.
Visits.
You know what Sark is trying to put together there. I think A&M's trying to be the kryptonite to that. And in the process, they would become kind of the big bullies of the SEC. I think that's their ultimate goal. Can they get there? I don't know, with Georgia and Bama, but I think that is what they're trying to create there.
So Colin Klein, former Heisman Trophy finalist quarterback. I'm going back to his Heisman Trophy lineup. Who was there at the ceremony with him? It is Johnny Manziel winner, Manti Te'o, finished second. Colin Klein is third. The first two guys have a Netflix Untold, and the third guy is Colin Klein.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
The guy who would be the least likely to get a Netflix Untold.
Yeah, everything balances out.
Yeah, it would just be him silently looking at the Netflix camera. That's why it's Untold, because he just wouldn't talk.
All right. On that note, those are our spiciest, hottest takes for the college football 2025 season. Craven, any closing thoughts out the door?
Yeah, the Texas Monthly Top 50 Barbecue Joint List dropped today. I was looking at that earlier. I wanted to ask you, when you go to a barbecue place, what's your standard kind of barbecue order? Like, what do you get into when you walk into a barbecue joint for the first time?
Am I sharing or this personal?
It's just a personal plate for Carter Yates. You're on work assignment. You're stopping by, Pinkerton's Barbecue for the first time. Kind of what's your kind of get to know a barbecue spot order?
Half pound brisket. Actually, let me go 4th pound lean brisket, 4th pound fatty brisket, and then 4th pound turkey, 4th pound sausage. That's pound right there. Take some home, obviously. I mean, you're not,
sure, of course.
You take stuff home. Sides, barbecue beans, 100%. Mac and cheese. No, it kind of just like fills me up too much. It takes away from the good. Not that mac and cheese isn't good, but like I'm not going for the mac and cheese. That makes sense. Yeah. Barbecue beans. I like potato salad too. I know it's kind of the same thing as mac and cheese in the fill up category, but I don't know. Potato salad when it's cold is kind of refreshing a little bit almost.
You a mustard or mayonnaise potato salad guy?
Huh?
You a mustard or mayonnaise potato salad guy?
I'm going mustard because I already saw your tweet about it.
Yeah. Just not a big mayonnaise fan. I can eat it in certain things. It's not my biggest thing. Matt Stepp's always giving me a hard time for this. I have a pretty controversial opinion about sides at a barbecue place. I don't get them unless I've gone there multiple times. And like, I know that I like one of them a lot. Like it's kind of a unique thing. Like at Pinkerton's, they have kind of like a duck gumbo that I think is really good. And I'll get some of that. But if I'm going to a barbecue joint for the first time, I'm not going to mess with the potato salad and the beans and the mac and cheese. Like I'm there to see how good their meat is.
How can they run the ball?
Yeah. Right. So I'm doing a 3rd pound of fatty brisket, a couple sausage links, a couple pork ribs. And then I was excited that you said this. I think smoked turkey, barbecue turkey, I think is the most underrated thing at most barbecue places. I also get some of that, take it home, and then that becomes sandwiches for the week. That's kind of how I roll with that.
Now, are you going sandwiches at the restaurant? Like get the bread at the restaurant? Okay.
No, I don't want to get made fun of. I don't want to be that guy. I make fun of that guy, right? I try not to be the sandwich guy at a barbecue place, especially a nice one. And I also try not to go heavy on the barbecue sauce unless that's like part of the trip. Like Salt Lick in Austin, barbecue sauce is like part of the deal. But for the most part, I think just like a good steak doesn't need steak sauce, good barbecue doesn't need a lot of barbecue sauce, especially good brisket.
I agree with that 100%.
Traditionalist, I'm old school.
What's the best barbecue restaurant in Austin?
I think for your bang for your buck in terms of line, I think Style Switch is hard to beat. They don't sell out. There's not usually a ton of line. It's right there on Burnett next to the Yellow Rose. So if you have a good afternoon, you can barbecue and enjoy yourself a little bit. Probably, I don't know. I guess Franklin's is still probably up there, Law Barbecue. But there's a place like I haven't tried. I think it's Leroy and Jones, maybe. I haven't tried that one, and I hear that is really good. I'm gonna have to get over there and try that one. I haven't got to. Interstellar may be the answer, honestly, in terms of Austin. I took a long route to that, but Interstellar may be. I was trying to look up Leroy and Lewis is the place in Austin I haven't been to, and it got number 2 on the list this year. So I have to get there. Burt Bean Company in Seguin was the number 1 spot. Also haven't been there.
I'm a normie. I'm a Terry Black's Spartan Springs guy.
Yeah, Terry Black's great. Terry Black's is great.
Also, not traditional barbecue, but Loro, that Asian infused barbecue, is pretty solid too.
Yeah, when I met my wife, she lived on South Lamar, and we frequented that place a decent amount because she's a vegetarian, but it has some good vegetarian options. So I could get barbecue, she could eat, whatever weird food she was eating, and we could both be satisfied, which to me are the greatest restaurants because I now have to think about that.
Also, though, Loro does have a bit of that vegan flair to it where all the food's
Right.
way too small.
Right.
Like the brisket's like you get 2 slabs.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
it's
like I'm still hungry.
$1,000.
Yeah, basically. So
Yeah.
that's why it's not my number one.
Yeah, I've branched out from the brisket loving because one, it's too expensive, and also I've turned 40 and I just have a hard time with the fatty smoked red meat. It just it gets me. It absolutely gets me. And so I've moved to more sausage, pork rib, turkey in my barbecue thing. It's been it's tough. Don't get old, Carter.
Yeah, that meat candy, and sometimes that meat
hard.
candy sits wrong. All right, y'all. Well, that's going to do it for our college football podcast and barbecue review. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off the Republic of Football podcast. Podcast over.